You look good, sound good. I'm going to bring Suze and Danielle on, and I'll let you guys take it away. Have a good time.
Thank you, Derek. Hi, Suze. Hi, Danielle. How are you guys?
I'm good. Happy Wednesday. We're midway through the week.
Doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. So excited to have you guys be on the panel for this event. I mean, we talk to many brands and service providers and retailers out there. And as much as, on the vendor community, we love partnering to push the latest and greatest technology because that's kind of what we do. You guys really call the shots in terms of making decisions around what to do in the context of kind of the big picture and how you run your businesses. So super excited to have you on board. Thank you for joining us. So let's dive right in. So Suze, tell us a little about yourself and Pattern.
I'm the co-founder of Pattern Brands. So we are a portfolio of brands, 7 brands currently, that focus on helping people enjoy daily life at home. So for us, we always say it's about those little micro moments of your day that oftentimes you don't think about that actually can ladder up to a feeling of happiness and, that sense of home. So, having a cup of tea out of a beautiful tea glass or wrapping yourself in a towel. But really how we operate is a one team, one cap table model. So that means while we have 7 brands, we operate and work across the entirety of the brand portfolio. And we do have a shared consumer file across the entirety of the portfolio. And this was really born, my co-founders and I, have been running Pattern for 5 years, but worked together for well over a decade now. In the prior, we ran a brand agency called Gin Lane, where we worked with a lot of early stage founders to help launch them in market, working with brands like Sweetgreen and Harry's and Hims and Hers. And really that was then what gave us the entrepreneurial itch. And we said, well, let's do this for ourselves, but let's reimagine, a way of operating in D2C as this one team model in a portfolio.
Well, that's fantastic. Good. Well, welcome, Danielle. So tell us a little about yourself and what you guys are up to.
Absolutely. So interesting. I come from a much different vantage point than Suze. So my background has been primarily investments, finance, and early stage investments up until the last 5 years, where I've moved more into an operator and brand building role. The first as a CTO for a health and wellness brand in the US. And now I am the co-founder and CEO of Sommsation. Sommsation is interesting because we launched our business in October of 2022. So very recently, as an omni-channel online marketplace for wine tasting experiences, very specifically for small production wineries. So think really great products that come from the best real estate from all over the world, but it's hard to come by and doesn't necessarily hit the mainstream distribution channels. So we've built a direct-to-consumer platform to partner with these wineries and connect wine lovers from all around the world. So it's not just about selling wine, it's about creating really great experiences and starting to infuse the modern technologies and the digital touch points into the traditions of wine and the social experience and hospitality and food and beverages around that. So the industry has been around since the 1600s or so, but it's just now starting to learn how to use technology. And so when we think about AI and all of the things that come with it, we've got a really, really wide gap in terms of where we are and where we're going, which is really interesting.
Personally true in terms of the gap between kind of the reality and the perception. So would love to dive in and maybe start with you, Danielle, which is kind of how do you see things? What challenges do you face in today's environment from a macro as well as a micro perspective affecting your business?
Absolutely. So as it relates to building our business, I think we're really on the cutting edges of technology. Because we're only a 2-year-old company, we really benefit from being able to make build and buy decisions to decide how we're going to implement and integrate certain components of our business. With that being said, because our partners and the products have been built, like I said, for generations. Sometimes there's not always the sophistication when it's end to end, from growing the grapes to bottling it to marketing each of the individual brands to getting it into the hands of individuals. There's a lot of fragmentation and a lot of antiquated business models. So we're really working on kind of a multi-sided platform to help the entire industry become a little bit more efficient and a little bit more streamlined. I think from a macro point of view, that's really important because we know that there's inflation out there. We know that shipping costs become a lot more expensive. And when you think about the quality and the integrity of the wine industry and hospitality in general, it's those stories, it's the education, it's the farming techniques, all of that really kind of have created and powered the industry. So we're using modern technology to be able to tell that story, to be able to get it out to more people faster, but to also try to centralize and create some economies of scale. So that way everyone kind of benefits from the technology while still really enjoying the product. Of course, when we think about how we serve our consumers, being able to get really granular in their personal needs and what they enjoy most and what individual palates are, what their food and wine pairing preferences are, leveraging technology really creates a much more informed customer experience than what is kind of in the traditional food and beverage space, which is you go to a restaurant, you might meet with a sommelier, the mixologist might tell you what they're really interested in making. So we're able to take a lot more of an information approach in all aspects of our business. But creates a lot of opportunity and a lot of work.
A lot of work, a lot of opportunity, and definitely sounds better than Vivino. So, Suze, how about you? What challenges are you facing from a macro as well as a micro perspective?
I think for us, it's probably something that I'm assuming many people that are watching this would resonate with as well. It's just, how do you scale profitably in today's environment? Like, how do you make sure you're keeping an eye on the top and bottom line? And like for us, that's times 7 because we have 7 brands and one team, working across them. But I do think that's, again, whether you're a new business or a more established brand, just it's hard to maintain profitability. It's hard to then, continue to, scale in an efficient manner. And so for us, we're always looking at all aspects of the business. Nick Kaplan is an advisor of Al's and a close friend and mentor of mine. And so he often, is pushing me of like, how do we think outside the box? How do we look at this and come at this from another angle? And we always say, constraints breed creativity. And I think that is very true in that the constraint of really saying we, operate as profitably as we can and we grow profitably is a good and healthy constraint, because it means that you say, how do I then look at my operations, my marketing, my supply chain? How do I find efficiencies without sacrificing growth? But also, it, means that you can look for opportunities with your customer and your customer experience. To your point, Danielle, I think, one thing we always say is, we're a direct with consumer company, not a direct to consumer company. And that's something, we have been very passionate about, because we firmly believe that this isn't just about having a one-way kind of monologue to your consumer. It's about really understanding their needs and how to best serve them, because ultimately that's what we're here for. And I think that's really exciting opportunities that technology and AI brings to us, both on, again, efficiencies in your internal workflows, but also opportunities that you can create with your customer.
That's fantastic. Very good. So maybe to pick up on that, AI. What do you think? Are you excited? Are you ambivalent? Go first.
I'm very excited. It's something that I think for me, I think we're very lucky in that as an early stage company, you can kind of be on the forefront of some of these things and you can dip your toe in the water. But for us, it's really transforming how we operate as a team. It's making it possible to grow more efficiently. And, this year we set out at the beginning of the year and set an AI challenge, actually company-wide, where we said, hey, we as a company are really embracing AI. Again, the good, the bad, the ugly, there's pros and cons to everything. But we said, let's look at, what is the most impactful way we can use this across the organization. Our team has really got into that. I have one employee that I definitely think is going to be the winner, in that they are very consistently every single week saying, Suze, here's what I'm doing. And it's been really impressive to see. But for us, we really are using it across marketing, across creative, and still, I'd say, then moving on to more operations and supply chain in the future.
That's fantastic. Definitely. Well, I don't know whether I can sign up for the AI challenge, but I may. Danielle, how about you? What do you think? What do you think about AI? Is it going to have an impact in your business? And you excited about it?
Absolutely, it already is. It's something that we're working on, pretty regularly. I think it's a big topic of conversation. It has been probably for the last year, right? Not only I think within our organizations, but in forums like this and across strategy and planning. One of the things that I'm observing is there's a lot of discussion about where and how you use AI, and I think we're starting to see people getting a little bit more comfortable bringing it internal for operations and brainstorming, whether that's sandboxes or playgrounds or whatnot. I think to make it a little less scary, because it is scary, right? You hear these doomsday headlines of it's going to take away jobs. We heard some different facts and figures even earlier in this discussion, and so without being hands-on, I think that becomes really daunting. I think as soon as you start to get hands-on, whether it's through an AI challenge or, just kind of tinkering in your own personal life, I think you start to see that it's really digestible. So we're using it for a couple of different things. I think the biggest right now is thinking about how we can leverage AI to support some internal functions that are just really time consuming and maybe don't need to be, with a little bit of support from AI. So that could be, content writing, that could be editorial and proofreading, that could be tracking the shipments that are going out, just little things that we know have to happen. And so you start to get a little bit more comfortable with what the AI is doing. And then, of course, we try to get really creative, as Suze was saying, when there's constraints, primarily time and resources, how can we leverage that to really power our business? And so we're doing a lot of that in the content creation, and really what I'm calling the content reminder category, which means that there's a lot of work that goes on, and all of a sudden 6 months go by and you may forget that you worked on that. So if you have AI that's going to remind you or kind of keep tabs on what's been worked on, it creates these really great efficiencies. And it also creates knowledge share within an organization, which is actually counterintuitive to, I think, what a lot of people are scared on the AI front about, because they think it's taking away from people being able to do things. So I'm really excited about being able to showcase it, that we can actually position it to make people be able to move a little bit faster, get a little bit more creative, and kind of get that time to slow down, take a breath of fresh air, and think about how to get even more creative and even more effective and efficient.
That's actually a great segue. So the way we think about it at Pipe 17 is kind of very similar, which is, we have this concept of a kind of AI teammate for operations, which basically we're building out this thing that Derek talked about, called Pippin, which is really kind of along the same lines as making kind of the team more productive and giving better outcomes to the business. So Suze, how about you? Where are you actually focusing the AI efforts?
I think for us, a big part of it is in the creative execution. Like Danielle, I think you said that well, in terms of how do you also give, team members the time back and also the additional support and leverage that they need. For us, it's a high volume content business. If you just think about number of paid ads, like for one of our brands last year alone, we had over 20,000 ad variants. And so AI is really impactful in thinking about how we can automate some of the ad copy and content creation as it pertains to variants, so that you can really get, that scale, but without sacrificing the quality behind it. Because I think that's also, again, AI is very powerful, but it's our interaction with AI that I think amplifies the impact. And also, especially when you're talking creative or marketing, there's still the human within us, and ultimately we're humans selling to other humans. And so AI cannot be used in isolation. It's still us doing the prompting and kind of training the models. But for us, AI-driven tools in that area, we've explored a bunch. Our favorite so far on the copy side is something called Hoppy Copy. It's kind of a mouthful to say, but You can really train it on the brand voice itself, and then it can really help you with generating both ad copy at scale, email copy, etc. And honestly, it's fooled me. We've had a few emails when I'm reviewing the drafts, and I was like, oh, which one of the copywriters wrote this? And they're like, oh, it was actually so-and-so using AI prompting. And I literally, again, with the training, could not tell. And I think that it then really frees up your creative team to focus on some of that higher level strategy and guidance or a larger campaign moment. But that's been, again, something that I think has made our team also feel safe in saying, oh, wow, this is how it can really help me in my workflow. And then also exploring other AI-driven, creative tools to iterate on some of those ad designs. On the Amazon side, we've just launched a new tool called Autopilot. And so we've been watching them for a couple of years. They've pivoted a few times, but that allows you to really automate a lot of your listing optimizations with AI. So I just think there's so many ways that you can really, again, make your work output better, but also more effective.
Well, that's super interesting. I think having the person in the middle, I think, is one of those things that is really, really key in terms of reviewing things. I mean, Nick talked about it earlier, but like he put this slide up that he created with DALL-E, and there were like 6 or 7 different variations of how to spell optimize, and a few of them were wrong. So it's just really interesting and important to have kind of people engaged on it. The listings area is interesting because, like, at Pipe 17, we're primarily an operations platform, but there's a lot of innovation that's possible within listings that you talked about. So I think it's a super exciting area to look at. So Danielle, I guess people listening, how do they get started? What advice would you have for them? I mean, there's some interesting things Suze mentioned around content, and you guys, just the business you're in, there's huge applications of AI all the way across to maybe one day potentially me being able to smell the wines across my computer. But how are you thinking of things that are a little bit more grounded?
Yeah, I mean, some of the AI that is being deployed within the wine industry, which is surprising, but you see it with your own eyes, is basically, you take some different components and the AI can sort the grapes, can decide the quality level of them, can put them in different buckets, and can kind of get you well on your way. So that's just one really fascinating observation that I've seen. But I think when thinking about AI, there's 3 key components that I think are just mission critical. And it's one of those areas where you really need all 3 in order for this to work out. And that's people, process, and technology, right? The 3 big things. But I think we're in a world where you really do need all 3 to be successful. If you don't have modern technology, if you don't have the ability to move your data and your information around really quickly, I think it's a non-starter. And so that to me is kind of one of the first big pieces of that is the technology piece. If you don't have people that understand the technology to build the processes around it, you could end up in a very, very bad position. Alternatively, if you have all of these great processes in place and then, you try to change things up and just assume that it's going to replace the people, you're probably going to be in another bad place. So I think it's kind of reorchestrating the puzzle pieces in a way that works for your organization and for individuals within the organization. I don't think that's a one size fits all, right? I think there's going to be some organizations that come out of the gate and invest significant amounts of money into being AI first. And then I think, you kind of start to work backwards. I always recommend start small because you can always run to full speed very, very quickly. And so if you start to do a proof of concept and slowly start to integrate it more and more and gain the confidence that it's going to be usable, then, you're really setting yourself up for success. And there's a lot of different use cases that could be. But I think it's really coming up with a strategy, making sure that you have the people, processes, and technology in place, and then kind of going from there and having conversations like this, right? Staying in the dialogue, understanding what's working, what's not working, where you are in comparison to kind of set the journey is really what I think people should be focused on, my team included.
That's fantastic. Let me kind of ask you one follow-up before we go to Suze, which is, what are you trying next that's AI related in your business? So what's the next thing maybe in the next 30 days or 90 days?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're going to try to implement is taking some of our proprietary AI and having it work together. Right now, we've kind of done, a few different silos, whether that be related to data and analytics or predictive pricing and dynamic pricing models, or the creative content, or starting to think about how we're going to personalize a little bit more. I think starting to get the AI to integrate a little bit as our humans collaborate is something that we're starting to chip away at.
That is super interesting, bringing it together. Suze, how about you?
For us, I mean, I'd say in terms of just addressing, how I think other brands should think about AI, one thing that we've really thought about internally is just how vast the opportunities are, but also how easy it can be to almost be chasing every new trend that you hear about. And so we keep on reminding ourselves internally, one of our values as a company is to focus on impact. And so every time I get kind of tempted by a new trend, I really make myself kind of take a moment and say, does this go in line with my goals? What are the KPIs? Again, just considering the range of use cases for AI, it would just be so easy to invest so widely without a clear idea of what success looks like. So Danielle, when you were saying, hey, I think step 1 foot in before you run at it in full, I really, agree there, because I think AI is this incredible, tool for exploration and growth. And it's about your team embracing that mindset, but also still staying true to kind of best practices of business strategy and kind of planning to make sure that you are, again, being strategic in everything that you're doing. But I think it's an exciting time because none of us are experts at this yet. We're all exploring, and we need to have a sense of curiosity in that exploration, because I think that's where some of the magic, really happens. But in terms of the next 30 to 90 days, I mean, again, as an e-commerce business, I am just so deep in Black Friday, Cyber Monday planning right now that for me, it's all about how do we make sure we're getting the best insights as we, finalize the strategies there. How am I using it to generate the best, most impactful, ad copy hooks and creative? I think once we come down out of that, when we start to sit down in 25, that'll then be really about, if this year I'd say, it was about AI in our creative and marketing workflows, next year is going to be really how does AI impact data, operations, supply chain, and how do we start to step into that strategically?
That's actually a good segue kind of into the final question for you guys. Maybe one piece of advice for everybody before we open up for questions. There's 1 or 2 questions we have from the audience as well. So also one piece of advice. Your peers are obviously on, so listening to you attentively. What would you say to them? Maybe wait till January is what I'm hearing from you, Suze. But what else would you guys advise? Danielle, you can go first.
Yeah, I think it's kind of piggybacking off of what Suze said, which is don't try to do everything, because then you're just trying to boil the ocean. I think it's take some time, be strategic. What is a problem you want to solve? Where do you have resource gaps? Where do you have constraints? And try to really come up with a plan of what your goals are, and then start to work backwards on how the adoption of some AI, whatever you decide that is, should be deployed, because it becomes a lot easier to have the hypothetical fail fast, if you will, or to pivot when you know what it is that you're aiming for. The sandbox and exploring is great, but if you're just getting started, trying to set out a use case and go for that and attack one thing at a time, I think is going to set people up for success and get those that aren't as comfortable in the world of AI a little bit more confidence.
Exactly, because it's one of those technologies that's still nascent, so it makes mistakes. So, often in management, especially with big companies, people use that as an excuse to shut it down, which obviously doesn't let it grow. So, Suze, what do you think? What's the kind of one piece of advice you'd have for those out there?
I mean, I very much am in agreement with Danielle. I think it's you, and this goes for anything in business, but be clear on your end goal and then be flexible in how you get there. And I think with AI, that is the same, right? Like really understand where you can focus on impact, where you can create the most value for your business. Then really, again, learn, explore, test, and iterate, because AI is so quickly evolving that I feel like we're so much further along this month than we were last month than we were 6 months or 12 months ago. And so again, I think this is go into it with an open mindset, go into it with a sense of curiosity, but really maintain best business practices of strategic planning and really focusing on, where you're driving value versus, getting lost in the sea.
That's interesting. So maybe one question from me before there's a few questions from the audience, which is, do you envision a world where you basically have, your prospective customers sitting behind ChatGPT, Claude, or any other chat-like interface, buying your products through that? Maybe not necessarily the checkout, but everything in ahead of it. Do you see that world at some stage in the near future? Are you preparing for it?
I don't think the near future. I definitely think, just the evolution of social commerce and conversational commerce and other avenues to purchase. I think it's hard to rule anything out, but I also think that there's probably, a steeper adoption curve and a lot of kinks to work out before it becomes mainstream. So could it be happening very quickly in certain organizations? Yes. Is it going to be the core business model? I think it's a little bit of a ways away.
What do you think, Suze?
I would agree with that. I mean, look, I think never say never for anything, but ultimately, our job is to continue to meet the consumer where is best for them, and obviously to give them opportunities. And so that may absolutely be, a way that some consumers are choosing to engage with us. I also think, though, this is an ecosystem, and we need to think of the ways that we meet our consumer as an ecosystem, and that would be maybe one touch point or one avenue, especially for something that required a little conversational back and forth. I mean, even, for us with Postscript, we're testing some of the automated, conversational messaging to see how that looks from a conversion standpoint. So again, I think meet your customer where they are. There's going to be absolutely an evolution as we go into the coming years with AI in how people are transacting. But I also again, think about right now, people still are going back to the store, et cetera. And so it's going to be really that ecosystem approach.
That's fantastic. And then one question from the audience, because we're running a little bit behind, is, and Suze, you kind of touched upon this, which is, AI as it relates to physical goods and how much of it you have sticking around. I mean, I was reading the public reports of a retailer, and it's a brand, but they have many retail locations, and I was astonished how much inventory they have. So are you guys excited about the potential of, carrying less inventory or others carrying less inventory and AI helping there?
Yes, I'd say as a business that has, several thousand SKUs across, 7 different business units, all with different levels of demand. We're very omni-channel, our demand planning is a process that at the moment is incredibly manual. Gives me a lot of anxiety at times where I'm kind of going through and still looking again in spreadsheets. And so a big area that we're excited about is how can AI really help us with demand forecasting? I think there's just so many wonders of AI in terms of trend prediction, et cetera, that we should and hope to be able to leverage.
Fantastic. How about you, Danielle? Do you think is there a role to play there? You guys have a marketplace model, I guess. So
Yeah. So we have a marketplace model, but I think more in general, right? When you just think about data and analytics and how you use that to make business decisions, it starts with what question are you trying to ask, right? And if you have all of that information and you can maneuver through it a lot faster, you can ask harder questions, you can get business insights a lot faster, right? Because you're not going through spreadsheets and making models and querying several databases to aggregate all of that. So to me, it's one of the, I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit because there's a lot of building blocks to get there. But I think it's a very useful way to leverage AI because you can just be asking yourself all of these questions when you get the building blocks in place, and you can start to get more and more good information trained into the various models to be making almost real-time decisions with really insightful, evidence-based and data-backed information.
That's fantastic. And I think some of the people who've been on the forefront of this will probably try to get them back on one of these sessions. One of them is a company called Wise Labs, and they basically do exactly that. They sell kind of home cameras, but they do this today, and they've kind of achieved millions of dollars of savings in inventory. So look, Danielle, Suze, we are super grateful to have you on this panel today. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and we wish you the best of luck for the remainder of the year as busy season ramps up. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Here, one final question before you go, just because I'm curious. Are either of you hiring right now?
We're always, looking and having conversations. There's no like key roles that we're actively hiring for at the moment. Again, going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, it's about really just getting the team in a place of immense focus so that we can kind of sprint through the finish line through the end of the year.
And the reason I ask is because I'm wondering if you have questions in your hiring process around what AI tools you use. How are you using AI today? You mentioned the AI challenge, which is awesome. Have you implemented these things? Because it feels like if you're not hiring someone that's testing these things, then they're behind.
Yes and no. The one thing I'll say is, again, it goes back to attitude and openness, because this is something where we're all exploring and we're all like learning. And I think one of the things we say at Pattern is we hire for a sense of curiosity. That's something that's incredibly important, because if you're a curious person, you are open to learning, you're always growing. You also typically have lower ego because you know that you don't know everything, and that there's always more to learn and more to grow. And so one of the big things that when we're saying, like, is this a person that would be, a great addition and kind of push our team further? It's, do they have that sense of curiosity that, unifies us collectively? And I think if they do, they're probably exploring AI. And if they're not already kind of tinkering, they certainly will be once they join the team.
That's very fair. Awesome. And Danielle, you said you have a few job postings out there. So if there is anybody in the transition here at the event, be sure to check out both of their LinkedIns and follow them along. Thank you guys both so much. We're going to move right into our final panel.